Welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon.
I'm Pam.
And I'm Tania.
We're all property people running our own businesses. This podcast is just us chatting about anything and everything property. Now, you may have noticed that Stuart is missing. Unfortunately, he has been struck down by COVID in the last couple of weeks, and he's still feeling rather unwell. So, Stuart, I hope you're feeling better as soon as possible. I'm sure you'll be listening to this and very disappointed that you're missing out. So I do hope your recovery goes well, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. But in the meantime, Pam and Tania have very kindly agreed to join me for a chat. They've been on the podcast before, back in episodes 64 and 65, where they were talking to us about choosing locations and all sorts of other brilliant things. And they are both very experienced people in the property industry. Just before I hit the record button, we were talking about energy costs. And this fits quite well with what Stuart and I were talking about last week. And we were chatting about issues around HMOs coping with increasing energy costs, and then also about trying to improve properties with energy efficiency and green technology like solar panels and heat pumps. Between Pam and Tania, they've got a brilliant story about each of those. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go first. I think let's go to Pam first. And you have solar panels on your house, so you've had them for quite a long time. So I understand 2011. You said you had them fitted. Was that right?
Yeah, we had them fitted in 2011, and at the time they were the latest, greatest technology. You know.
How much did they cost?
They cost £13,000. I can't remember how many we've got, but we've got quite a lot of solar panels. But only now, I've been keeping a spreadsheet of the feed-in tariff that we got paid back. And we were on the first feed-in tariff, which was the highest one. And only now, this year, we have just been paid back our total investment. So from now, we should be sort of earning money on that. But, you know, if that money had been sitting in the bank, I would have been earning money all along, but I haven't been. But that's fine. You know, we're quite happy to go as greed as we can.
I think you said you've just got the solar panels so for electricity. So you don't have solar panels for heating, and you don't have a battery, I think?
Yeah, that's right. Because in those days they didn't have battery storage. I've had quite a few people phone me and say, you know, salesmen phone me and say, do you want to install batteries and that? But they're quite expensive, actually, and we just didn't think it was worth it at the time. We might look into it in the future when technology's improved, because, you know, it improves all the time. So, yeah, then we'll look into it. And the same with the inverter. These people keep on wanting to swap our inverter. But we said, well, when it breaks, we'll worry about it. And, well, it hasn't broken yet. So, you know, we've been quite fortunate in that respect. Before
you got them installed, did you put together a forecast for how long it would take to pay back?
No, so we did a bit of research, and the salesperson said about 10 years, and actually they were right. But you know, I don't know how much research they had done, to be honest. You know, they could have just been making it up. Yeah, but the whole thing is, you know, they were a new thing, so you've just got to multiply it out and guess how many hours of sunshine you're going to have, and also the angle that your solar panels are at all makes a big difference. But yeah, for us it's worked out, you know, so we're happy with that. So yeah, we'll see what happens in the future.
We've got solar panels as well.
I didn't know. Fantastic.
So we moved a year ago, and there's an outbuilding. So there's a garage with an office above it, which we laughingly call the coach house. And that has got, I think it is only 5 years old. So that was as part of the planning permission, they had to install solar panels on it. My only experience of getting the tariff, so they're on a feed-in tariff as well, so we can use it and feed in. I'm about to get a check through. It's a bit of a faff. I mean, it was a big faff getting them transferred over to me as an owner of the house. not least that because they were British Gas that's who it feeds into. They were upgrading their computer system, and they didn't seem to have a proper message for people like me who were transferring over. But I think I'm going to probably get about £120. And they now say they've gone from sending a cheque, which literally this year, they now will do a bank transfer.
Oh dear, they're catching up slowly.
Actually, they've been sending checks all along, and for the very first time, in fact, over this weekend, I got my first bank transfer, and it was just yay! They've come to the 21st century.
And the way it was explained to me was that this is basically a benefit payment. So we have to, you basically have to phone in, and you have to give them you have to do all the work basically. And you have to apply for the benefit of the fact that you fed in the electricity into them. So it's very clunky. They don't make, according to the guy I was talking to, they have to run it as part of their being a fuel supplier, one of the large fuel suppliers, but they don't actually make any money. It's just an administration thing that they have to do, apparently. Hence, they make it difficult.
So when you were looking at houses to buy, did having solar panels influence your decision at all?
No, but we were thinking, because we were going to buy another house, and we were thinking, that was going to be like a big eco project for us, actually, whereas this house has got a lot less needing to be done to it. I was talking a lot, I was mentioning before, wasn't I, about Emma, a friend of ours who is an eco retrofitter. And so she was giving me lots of advice for this other property that we were buying, which was a stone built property into a quarry face, but it was old and hadn't really had anything done to it since the 80s. And her main bit of advice was, before you change anything or do anything, is basically think about the insulation of the property. So we were looking into whether to insulate internally or externally, and where we could not undermine the beauty of the stone, for example, on the outside of the building.
You don't want to wrap it in polystyrene or anything.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of things. There's amazing cork paints and things like that can be applied in multiple layers that now will insulate houses. So we were looking at which facades of the house we could insulate externally, because it's cheaper and doesn't take any space out of the house. And then we were looking at internal insulation as well. So all the interior of the exterior walls, but you get my meaning.
Yes.
And also how to prepare for it, because we thought, well, we can't do it all in one hit because we just didn't have the money. But and it need a rewire and all of that kind of stuff. So we were going to rewire, kind of surface rewire, making it a feature. And with the idea that as we then start going from one room to the next, each room would basically need replastering, but we would re-insulate them, etc., etc. But that seems to be the big thing, is basically insulate your house before, and then your fuel cost will instantly come down anyway. And your walls and your roof are the biggest places for heat to escape and energy to kind of go out of the house. And actually, and I was saying earlier, wasn't I, that her advice is, because we had to get a new boiler for this house, and her advice was, don't try and deal with the government with their kind of grants and everything, because they're making it very, very difficult, and there isn't anybody, we haven't got enough people who can actually do the work. But also that the technology isn't quite there unless you've got lots of money to burn, the technology is not there quite for the longevity of any products that you might put in. So she wasn't too hot on air source heat pumps if you're working on a budget.
Would you have had to have changed the whole heating system if you went for an air source heat pump? But would you have been sort of pumping air around, or would you have used the air source heat pump to then heat water to then power a traditional heating system?
I was trying to get my head round it, because there's various versions, I think. But what I was also thinking was, should I have underfloor heating? Because we've got solid floors under our wood floors downstairs, for example. So it was getting very complicated. It gets very complicated, and it becomes almost like a remodel. Really, I mean, that's how complex it is especially on old buildings. On our buildings down in Crawley, I think it would be less complex to at least get the insulation put in, because we just need to take the cladding off and put the insulation in, really. But on old buildings where you've got multiple different materials and everything, it just gets complicated. And it is basically, don't bother moving into your house. Prepare, or move out, get everything out and get the thing done all in one swoop, and then, doing it bit by piecemeal is and I don't think that this is part of the problem, I think, is that the powers that be are not helping people understand what needs to be done and where the best money is spent for yourselves, but also for the environment as well. It's complicated, isn't it? It's so multifaceted.
It is.
But they're forcing it. One thing I do know is that they are using landlords as the first port of call to basically make it happen.
Do you know how EPCs have to be C by 2025?
Yeah, I've seen lots of headlines for this. Is this actually fact, or is it rumor? I'm not sure.
No, it's an actual fact. And in fact, I've just put one of my houses on the market to sell it, because I don't know how I can ever get that house up to an EPC C. So the other day, Jill Fielding was talking at Crawley Property Meet, and she said she reckons it will cost about £10,000 per dwelling on average to get your house up to an EPC C. And she recommends, if you're buying new property now, make sure it's already an EPC C before you buy it, because I can't remember the figure. I have a feeling it's something like 2.9 million properties this will affect. Something like that. Tania, can you remember any figures like that?
Yeah, it was something like that.
If you've got to spend 10,000 per property, how are you going to recoup that? You can't suddenly put up your rent by that much, etc., etc.
Ah, well, perhaps the energy companies have got a sneaky plan to help you out there by doubling and tripling the energy costs. so suddenly that 10,000 sounds like the cheap option.
Well, yeah, but like my property up north, I don't get that much rent for it because it's I just don't. And I just thought, to try and do that, it's just too complicated. It's easier just to sell the property.
Yeah, that's a single let property, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When you're not paying the bills, it's so difficult to justify it from a business point of view.
It is. And I've got like another one of my properties is a flat, and I'm thinking, well, we'd once tried to get insulation done in the whole building, and a few people said no. So we couldn't move that forward. So we can't insulate that flat. How could we get that EPC up to a C? But actually, Jill's advice was just wait for a while. I think this is what she said. Just wait for a while and see what the energy, like what you said, what the energy companies are going to do about it. Because they've got to do something. We can't actually put 2.9 million houses out the rental market. That's not going to work, is it?
No, quite. Most of your portfolio for you guys is HMO properties where you are paying the energy bills. So do you guys have a plan for coping with the increase in energy costs?
We're just discussing it, weren't we, Pam? That's just where our conversation was like this morning before we were talking with you, was what can we do? And we've already had throughout COVID, obviously we've had all these lockdowns and the government asking people to work from home as much as possible. At one point, I think we had something like 80% of our tenants were working from home or furloughed, so staying at home the whole time. So therefore, we'd set all our rents based on an assumption that, say, 50% of the time, 50% of people would be in, and they would need to heat and use electricity. So we kind of calculated that by rule of thumb. But then suddenly, they were all staying in. We also were having, because of where 5 of our properties are in Crawley, And obviously Gatwick closed down, so that had a massive effect on a lot of our tenants, and a whole load of them ended up on universal credit. And in the process of going on to universal credit, stopped paying their rents because they had to wait for 6 weeks plus. And the government haven't paid us for that. They've never caught that back up. So we've got quite a few of those tenants are in arrears. And now we're facing, and so we've had a number of those kind of things going on. And then now we've got these we've already had increased bills and reduced income, but we've now got the increased bills that we can see floating our way. So what we're thinking of doing is increasing rents for the first time in a long time. We've usually kind of just done it when people have changed over. We'll have add an extra £20 or £25 to the rent or something like that when you've got a new tenant. But now we're actually serious, and I think we're going to do it, aren't we, Pam? We're going to ask for...
Well, we have to. I'm about to actually do a spreadsheet. Our tricky thing is, with quite a few of these houses, we were with Green Network Energy that went bust earlier on in the year. And then we were with Avro Energy, and they've just gone bust now. So the bills are all a bit tricky because they say to you, please don't swap. When they put you on with another supplier, they say, please don't swap for the first 3 months or 6 months until they get it all sorted out. So our bills are a bit tricky until we can just find out exactly what is what. But also because Crawley has been hit so hard by COVID, all our rents of new rooms coming in, we actually reduced by just £5 here and £10 there just to get tenants. And we are fully tenanted. But if everyone's all the new tenants are actually just paying a slight bit less. And now we're thinking, well, now we've got to increase all their rents. We won't do it for the ones that are in a fixed term agreement, but the ones that have passed their first 6 months, we have to, because we just cannot support them anymore. You know, we kind of feel like we're not running a charity, and that's really what it does feel like at the moment. So yeah, it's a tricky situation.
And in addition, of course, they're facing an extra or a loss of £20 a week, aren't they? In their universal credit, I'd have thought, if there's the ones that are still on it. So we're in a bit of a quandary, and we can ask, but we might not get. Is the way we're thinking.
And they're also paying their arrears, so they're going to be struggling. But everybody's going to be struggling for a little while, I think.
Yeah. Do you have fixed term energy costs at the moment, or are you seeing your prices go up already?
So in Crawley, we were with Avro for 3 of our houses. So those are not fixed. They were on fixed term contracts, but they've just been moved on to, I think, Octopus Energy, which is it's the standard variable rate. So no, they're not fixed costs. The other 2 houses, yeah, they are on fixed costs actually. So those 2 will be okay, but it's the 3 plus we've got others in Nottingham, and that are on variable as well. So yeah.
But the other thing is with a fixed cost is that it will build up, won't it? So we might have set it at a certain rate, but if we go over that, they come back for extra money. Is that right, Pam?
Yeah, but we do pay a fixed cost per unit of how much gas or electricity they use. And they just happen to be using a lot more now, which we didn't budget for in the beginning because we didn't expect people to be working from home so much.
Yeah.
Something that sounded interesting there. When an energy company goes bust, you don't get to keep the tariff that you'd previously agreed. Is that the case? So they move you to a new company and you get given a new tariff, and you don't get a choice over that.
Yeah, that's right. And then they say to you, please don't move for about 3 months, or until they have onboarded all those new customers, because it just causes chaos for them. So you just stay with them for 3 months, and as soon as I can, of course, I check all the comparison sites and then I move. But unfortunately, because I do that, I often move to the cheapest company, and those are the ones that have been going bust lately. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things.
Dear, yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? I can understand it taking a while for the companies to sort themselves out and get on top of the paperwork and transition and stuff. But yeah, being forced onto whatever tariff they like, basically, and then being asked to stay there. It's a bit frustrating.
they are being as fair as they can. They're not putting you on their highest tariff. And when we moved from Green Network Energy to EDF, they put us on a reasonable tariff. And then they said from actually the 1st of October, if you don't swap, everything's going up. So, we swap, that sort of thing. So, they're trying to be fair, but nobody can control this prices of gas and everything that are going up,
Yeah, quite.
But saying that, I was at an HMO on Friday. Every single light in that house was on in the middle of the day. And actually, I put a note on the WhatsApp group saying, please be considerate,
If it's not for us who's paying they're paying the bill ultimately, aren't they? So we're paying the bill, but their rent is paying the bill, is what I'm saying. We've allocated a cost against it. So, but obviously they're overstepping that now. But it's just for the planet. If anything else, it's just like, for God's sake, we're not, just beggars belief.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't feel it coming out of their pocket. I don't. You know what I mean? They actually don't kind of. Yeah, they don't feel it coming out of their pocket as a separate cost. That's what I think happens, and they just kind of like blithely go through and things, and you just and the amount of times we've gone through past our houses on a winter's day, and they've got windows open. Yeah, and they've got the heating whopped up at 24, 25 degrees, and the windows open.
And when we do inspections, we often find they've got electric heaters and they're running them. And you say to them, just turn on the central heating, and they just don't. They just use their own electric heater, which is not good. Yeah.
Even though we've banned them, we've banned electric heating, because we've given them, heating, and that's our expectations that they use the heating. But no, but I was cold. Well, turn the heating on, and then we have complaints as well because we use what's it called, the thermostat, which is this thing where you have to actually go and press a button to get kind of 2 or 3 hours heating, and that kind of frustrates them. And it's just like, well, actually, I do that. I basically have a thermostat in my house, although I use my thermostat in a thermostat-y kind of a way, and I interact with it, because I work from home, so therefore I am, aware when the heating's coming on and off. And I have it set quite low, and I move the thermostat round with me. Sound like such an old skinflint, but I do. I literally walk around, and we've got them like a controller on our smartphones. But we have half considered about moving them over onto Hive, all the houses over onto Hive, and then us watching and turning things down because then we'll have control. We'll be able to override it. But they're quite happy to. I mean, I would never put the heating up to kind of 20, 24, 25, 26 on my thermostat at all. But we often come into, especially the Crawley houses, I think, where they've just really whopped the heating, the thermostats up. So it becomes a bit of a battle.
I do agree on needing to be careful with your heating, but my wife and I do have a running disagreement on this. So I will quite often be sat at home, because I work at home anyway, and I'll have a t-shirt on and a jumper on and then a fleece on, and I've turned the heating up to 24, and my wife will come home and say, 24? You can't have it that high. I'm freezing. I've got clothes on as well. It's not like I'm turning the heating up because I can't be bothered to get a jumper.
You might need to move your thermostat to a different room, because it's often where the thermostat is placed as well. So if you've got it in a cold spot, then it will never get up to the 24. Or if you've got it in a warm spot, the rest of the house won't get up to a temperature that's.
It's actually in the room I work in, so I think it's actually just me that's broken, really.
I think you need to look at insulating your walls and your roof or something like that.
Possibly, although it's a fairly new build house, so in theory it should be good. But yeah, anyway, as I said, I think it's me that's broken, really.
Yeah.
I need to fix my own internal
heating. Get a balaclava,
heating.
you'll be fine. Put your slippers on.
Yes. I haven't tried a balaclava. Perhaps I should try that. I do have slippers. So.
I did a whole plane journey from London to Chicago once with a guy sitting on the plane next to me with a balaclava on.
that would have worried me
Honestly,
a bit, I think.
Pre 9/11.
Oh dear. We've run over, which is fairly inevitable with these things. And there's one more thing I wanted to try and squeeze in. Tania, you were talking before we started about the idea that trying to get energy improvements and efficiency improvements to pay back was the wrong way of looking at it. So we started this conversation looking at Pam's solar panels and the fact that they've taken 10 years to pay for themselves. But Tania, you were saying that's wrong.
Yeah, well, I through talking to Emma, and also I'm very kind of interested in this whole thing. And one of the things that she was saying is that where else around the house do we expect payback for what we've an improvement we've done? So when we fit new double glazing, do we sit down with a spreadsheet and a calculator working out the payback of those? We might think, well, they'll improve the house value, and that will help. Like when I moved house, I actually changed our 1970s windows that we'd had for the whole of the time that we lived there for almost 20 years, changed them the year before to better windows, because I thought, well, that's going to add value and make it more sellable. But we seem to expect of our green improvements that they need to pay back. And what Emma has said, and I've heard it from other green experts as well, is that it was the absolute folly of the Green Brigade to try and convince people to do this because it would pay them back. So you don't look at your normal gas boiler and think, well, when's that going to pay back? Yet we look at an air source heat pump and say, when's it going to pay itself back off to me? And similarly, we look at maybe our changing to an electric car and think, well, how's it going to pay itself? And then we equate fuel cost to the extra fact, the fact that electric cars are going to cost more. And from what I can understand, and that we need to kind of get out of that kind of mentality, because what we're saving is actually the planet, not necessarily our pocket. And we've done what we've done at the cost of the planet already. So I think it's worth kind of thinking for me, I want that any improvements that I do to this house that I'm in now will be based on how is it going to help the planet. And, there's going to be an affordability element as well. But I would love to get some more insulation in the walls, for example. And I'll probably be doing that externally on the half of the house that's already rendered, at some point. But so I think that if we can stop thinking about how's it going to pay us back, although it's interesting because you can, like Pam's got her spreadsheet about her solar panels, it's interesting to be able to kind of go, oh yeah, that's paid itself back now. But maybe we need to stop thinking like that quite so much and think, how are we going to heat? I think it's ultimately going to come to how are we going to stay warm in our properties moving forward, because actually, we're going to run out of gas and we're going to run out of these things and we're going to run out of time for the planet, is my feeling.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's a good point to end on, really. The fact that we shouldn't be looking at it as a monetary payback, but we should, of course, be looking at affordability, but really be looking at it as a way to improve things, improve our properties, improve our green credentials, improve the environment, and improve our sustainability on this planet, which is all important things to work on.
Yeah,
probably more important than the money in our pockets, really, to some major extent.
Absolutely agreed.
I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to Pam and Tania for joining me at very short notice for this recording, and sharing your excellent knowledge again. And for everyone else, thank you very much for listening. Please do leave a rating and review if you have a few moments to spare. They really do help. The show notes can be found at thebusinessofproperty.com, and somebody will talk to you again next week.